sides of it.
So they are not
Mm,
trimmed, but they could filter some of those could be filtering some transactions, but yeah, they would have they wouldn't filter EOSI or token or something like that. So technically, let's say they are full, even though they might filter Alienware or some of them, but I don't know of any. Most of them are really full.
a dozen,
No,
just my guess, including
not quite.
standbys and all of that.
Yeah, the full roster of 36 skills, standbys, and top 21.
A third. Yeah,
No,
I don't know. I mean, it took a stab in the dark. I don't.
any other guesses?
Do I lose OIG points if I get it wrong? Shit, I'll go research it if I need to.
No, you shouldn't.
I mean, I'm not looking forward to going and pulling up that Notion pile of poop at all.
Why not? What is it that you don't like about the Notion? Because it's quite a nice piece of information.
I get that it's better, and if you know where to go and whatever, it's better at least now. But if I go to try to find my last scores or all the details or all of that, and it doesn't work for crap on mobile. Just so you know. Anyway, I mean it's fine. At least it's something. But I'm not a fan of Notion.
Hmm. The include nulls comment is quite funny because we're struggling to find one of the full history notes. Or did I misunderstand?
Well, he says that there's seven, probably because he just queried his own API and it produced the results. That's cheating. I'm just for the record. Um, oh,
Surprisingly, a lot of the standby guilds are running a full Hyperion.
that's my point. Is I mean, there are some people that are doing it for points. I mean, I'm assuming grab Ross's backups, spin it up, and keep it in sync. So that's why I
Yeah.
figured just I don't know,
That
handful of
won't
those.
surprise you. It won't surprise you, but those are the providers of full history on Wax that every then also experience some issues on their nodes. So they often don't get granted the points for full history because the SLR was not met or some other weird issue was going on with missing transactions and blocks in between. That has happened a lot in the past months.
Right. I mean, I would venture to say that most of them probably don't offer it because they really like running Hyperion. I don't know if there's many people like that, but I do. But that's it. They probably don't do it because they want to. They probably do it because they need to be able to qualify for standby.
Yeah, probably the main reason why standby guilds are running full Hyperion. The points.
That's the rules that you give them. I can't fault them for doing it. But yes, you'll see. I don't know. I mean, maybe they'll upgrade and get their stats voting home, but it's they probably are getting very heavily used, or they don't need to be because even our partial hit Hyperion servers, serve millions of whatever. So I would assume if it's an obscure node, especially if it doesn't have high SLA, it probably doesn't get a lot of use.
Yep. So it's 21. 21 is the number.
21. Damn. I went high, but I didn't think that high. For that reason, it's that there were a lot of people. And it's easy to spin up, especially like a trimmed one or filtered one, whatever, but easier. You get a snapshot and spin it up. I don't remember what guild it was. It took them a week to rebuild it when it crashed, though. Who was that? All right,
Paraquel?
One of them was sliding up in my DMs trying to get me to help them because their Hyperion crashed, and I think they had a week to do it, which led me to the impression they needed it for their review. Anyway, you could tell that they didn't have an in-depth knowledge, but they were just trying to scramble and get it back online.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm sick a little bit, but I think who you are describing is Powercall Block, and they weren't experienced enough, and then they went from a full Hyperion to a partial Hyperion overnight, for which they trimmed some old blocks, but that led to them not having the full 6-week range of blocks indexed, which, yeah.
There you go.
Was,
I don't know. It's random. When somebody's Hyperion blows up, normally they end up in my DM. So I just remember talking to them and chatting, but I didn't realize. I knew they were scrambling to try to even get it rebuilt by the evaluation time frame, but I get it. But I mean, that's the rules that you gave them. That's the rules that they're playing by. And I think y'all are maybe. I'm assuming the reason you bring that up is because. Do you know the stats on those usage of the 21 full
No.
Hyperion nodes?
No. One way we can start collecting those stats is if I mean, we don't want to push too many updates for you guys, but it might be that at one point we require you to sign up the Hyperion with a query hub from EOS Rio, because that's actually possible to gather some stats on the amount of requests happening on a node.
Right. I'll be sure to, since Anders isn't here and, Vicarious, he always is the one to chime in and say those stats can still be tweaked. But I agree. I mean, all of ours are registered with the hub as well, but do keep in mind they're all subjective.
Yeah, I highly doubt there will ever be a mode where we incentivize a Hyperion by its usage metrics, because that would never work ultimately. So I don't think that will be a thing anytime soon. But could help us find the most popular Hyperion nodes and task those guilds, API providers, with serving us a full history publicly, right? In any way that could work out. Two options have been loosely discussed in the past. The one would be making that a separate payment from Wax Labs to 3, 4, 5 guilds. However, it's uncertain how many we would need. Or the alternative, because I think that would be just a good argument for the discussion we had about technical guilds and developer or marketing guilds, product guilds, right? There could be an even greater or bigger incentive for full history, just to get that funded through the guild funding. That could also be an option. Another interesting option that has been thrown in by Käfer in an eternal OIG call, but we did agree that it's potentially complicated it's a complicated solution. Would be that we, like, let's say the full Hyperion at the moment, the difference between full Hyperion and partial Hyperion is 24 total points. So 2 points on the tech ops criteria multiplied by 12. And Käfer thought of a maximum points, a point allocation pool, like let's say 120 points for full Hyperion history solutions. And those maximum of 120 points get distributed to the providers of full Hyperion history. However, I do find that complicated to implement, especially if all of a sudden not 5 people provide full Hyperion history, but 10 keep
We just
providing
said
it for whatever
21, dude.
reason. Yeah, we have 21 at the moment. Yeah, I would be totally happy with those being 10 at max.
But I mean,
Right?
doesn't that have a scaling problem that ultimately the people that are looking for points are the ones that are running it and maybe not the ones that care or do it? And it's going to just diminish the amount of points available for those that want to do it. I
Yep.
mean, you're trying to trim it to 5, and you'll find a balance, but I don't know if that balance is going to be the top 5 cream of the crop. You're going to have 21 people, half or 2/3 of them that are going to say, okay, I'm in for whatever points I can get out of it. That's why they're doing it now. So isn't
Yeah,
that just going to
absolutely.
diminish? It's going to make those providers that do or can want to do it say, just what they do right now, it's not worth 24 points. It's not worth 24 points for what it would take me to build 2 of those monstrous servers. That's why we run partial for everything.
Yeah, absolutely. That's totally the main concern for that idea. It would certainly punish the best API provider because
Well,
he's tapping
deter.
into the same pool. Yeah, deter, exactly.
Sure.
Thanks. Lacking some vocabulary. It would
No, I
deter the
mean,
points for
I
a good
like it.
provider.
I like trying to think outside of the box and come up with the solution, but that's kind of what we have right now is that there's points offered for it, which everybody can get, but that doesn't ultimately relate to, the quality or the whatever. I don't want to diminish their servers may run better than mine. I don't know, but it's led to 21 providers, half of which probably aren't meeting SLAs, and you've really kind of convoluted the services as much as you were trying to streamline and perfect them.
But in
But I don't know.
isolation,
Go ahead.
in isolation, it's a pretty good idea that you have like a points budget for a solution to deter people from running at all. But yeah, I can see the downside. But because that would also solve like you want to give points for an IPFS solution, but you don't want 21 guilds running IPFS. Stuff like that. I mean, I really like the idea. It's just how do you prevent the race to the bottom and getting a crap experience?
Absolutely.
Correct. I
In
mean, does
itself,
that
it's
really solve what
wonderful.
we have right now?
In itself, it's wonderful, right? It would potentially probably also regulate itself to some point, but it could also lead to not favoring those that put up the hardware and the knowledge running it, getting all the requests, right? I think it will intensify the injustice there.
Right. And I mean, I think it's tough to rate them 1-to-1. Is that, one full database that was downloaded, copied, spun up, and kept in sync is not the same as, I'll say, the Sweden servers, which is like 9 Elasticsearch servers and tiered structures. And, I mean, they do things just on a different level, but way different than we do it. But, it's really hard to compare apples to apples by just generalizing and saying that's a Hyperion, even a full Hyperion. It really has to do with, I mean, does it have all the information and are people using it are agnostic of each other?
Mm-hmm. I also do see it quite fitting to incentivize the full Hyperion run by a few experts through OIG points, separately from the tech ops criteria. Like, if we were to remove all the full history points and select 5 of us, who are the most experienced ones, who are putting up a very resilient setup, who are able to serve a large amount of requests, this could be, and now I'm just being creative, nothing certain here, nothing discussed with my OLG colleagues. This could be worth a contribution score instead of a TechOps criteria score, which in my mind would be would make it a contribution as valuable as some other products in the network, lifting the score for some TechOps affine guilds, freeing them from having to build a flagship product on Wax to survive the turbulences inside Top 21 and Standby, for example.
How do you make that fair? You will get PPs asking, hey, why am I not allowed to do this for points? You know, that you open up a whole other set of issues.
Yeah, you're naming it.
Here's something that pops into my head about it, is that I would tend to, if you want to offer multiple public endpoints, which have some level of expectation of SLA, but I mean, if they're public and free, you get what you get. But the burden and even the reward not being expected to be a monstrous 38 terabyte full, just say, fine, the last 6 weeks worth of transactions, and there's a general precedent in the network set that, yeah, if you use an API node, the API node will have a full block log, but the history component may be trimmed. But at least if you hit it, you get what you get. But if you need history, if you need the full history, that's not something that is publicly funded for free for everybody. There's a mechanism like Query or something like that that's built and has its own mechanics to handle the multiple providers and even, you know, quantifying, and some sort of an agreement or something, because the explorers maybe need it, and there's a few things that maybe Wax ecosystem needs, but have it take 2% of BP pay and put it off in this history provider or whatever the hell it is. I mean, just come up with this mechanism for pay the provider or reward them with OIG points and just say, look, you guys work out whether you're members or whatever and assign the points accordingly. But stop expecting full history to be free and publicly available across the board. If you want people to have some history and contribute to offloading, like our servers aren't full, but they're handling 1 million requests a day. So that's 1 million that the other servers don't have to handle. And it worked for whoever the hell's using them. That makes sense? But you're leaning towards that, carving off your dedicated history providers. But I think you're going to always fight a battle of, well, why can't I get in?
What are there any concerns about making that a contribution on the score sheet for those guilds that provide full Hyperion history, of course, under specified requirements, for example, bare metal 95% or whatever we decide to, uptime, resilient setup, like a cluster of Elasticsearch nodes. Why would it be a bad idea to make that a contribution for those guilds?
I'm already looking at offloading all of it. I mean, you get out of having to manage any of that and say, as a network or community, we pay for the full history service from the Query product. And if you want to give contribution scores for it, obviously those that are running it and built it probably get a few more than those that are participating, but it has its own mechanism for, by all means, everybody's available to participate, but it has its mechanism for distributing and tracking and understanding who's doing what. And even if they're not getting used because nobody knows about it, well, that'll help fix that as well, right? But the OIG and the Wax network is to kind of offload that and say, we have our own new version of Infura, right? If you really want good, dedicated, full providers, here's the mechanism to do that. Great news. all of our validators are providing at least limited public infrastructure. It probably handles 80% of all public traffic. If you want to get some points and keep it 24 points or whatever it is, right? I mean, for 12 points versus 24, and just completely carve out and say, there's this product that you can pay for those services, and that therefore you don't have to expect to provide it for free for the chain.
But that will not lead to avoiding that some guilds put up a full Hyperion in hopes to receive the points, and at the end they won't.
They have to contribute or participate in theory with the query hub, like you were talking about, and either one of two things. It'll work itself out. If it ain't good, it ain't gonna get credit. It's got the metrics to be able to understand and do that. And number
I
two,
get you.
if it is good and nobody knows about it, when Null asks for it, hey, tell them there's this random number 36 guild that I'll be damned, they have a pretty good Hyperion node. You know why? Because nobody's using it. Here you go. So that's why I say it's just that gives you some of that mechanic to say, no, if you need it and you're not, an explorer, you need to pay for it. And it has its own mechanism for its providers. But if you want to reward and incentivize it, separate the two, like you started to already.
I get what you mean, but for background, just because I think a few people missed it, under the hood, a tool is used named Node Pulse, developed by Sentinel agents, right? Which is used to ping the different Hyperion nodes from inside query, check on latency, check if the requested block range is indexed, stuff like that. That's what Node Pulse is doing. So in theory, if you would have a bad latency or if the quality of your API is not good enough, you wouldn't get the request, so you wouldn't serve any requests ultimately.
Right.
But on the other side,
the whole mechanism for that's already kind of built in, right? I mean, Hyperion's phoning home the stats to the hub. You've got this outside probe trying to kind of get a bearing. You've got geo load balancing and routing and stuff like that. I mean, but in theory, y'all don't have to worry a lot about that because it kind of works itself out. If you're participating in that, we need this service for the chain. Cool. There it is. Is it free? Well, parts of it may be because Explore Waxblock needs an API key to be able to call off of it. And there's some sort of an agreement, whatever. But if somebody else needs that level of infrastructure and that level of querying of data, you should pay those providers. And there's a ready-made solution that's available.
I get you. Which leads to an actionable here. We should probably, as soon as possible, oblige the registration with Query Hub to reward the history solutions. Step one, because only then we can see from that perspective who's receiving the requests and the quality and quantity of the API.
I would recommend it. I don't know if it has to be required. Do remember some of this requires the latest and greatest version, and I was just helping somebody building one the other day that's still on a 339-10 or whatever, because 350 is still he's still working on it.
350-5 is the latest version, but that's still in development, you said, right? It's not officially released, it's just a branch on the repo.
Right. Nick and Noel are talking about the providers, yeah. and he's working on fixing the way that the query hub, it's talking about how many providers there are, and it's not how many providers, it's how many instances of Hyperion you have, like indexers and APIs. And we are blowing out some of the stats because we have so many instances of Hyperion versus, so like it'll say there's two providers. There's not two providers, there's one provider. It's just two of my Hyperion servers, the primary and the backup. So the statistics and all of are still a little wonky, but responding to the chat.
Yeah. So that's a dependency to establish that requirement. That version of Hyperion needs to be released first.
I wouldn't make it a requirement right now. I mean, if you want to participate in the query hub, you know, and have your server used and all of that, but I don't know if that's going to guarantee you points, you know, at the OIG level, because it may help you as an OIG validate some information about it. You should be able to see uptime and statistics about how much it's used, but I can tell you this, you're looking at two servers for us. You're looking at our external public server and our internal private server. So the stats are technically split, and a lot of them are internally generated. So I got some crazy high stats on a different set of servers, but you can't tell those apart.
But those are still two separate machines, right?
I run them as two separate machines because I dedicate public infrastructure and I have private internal infrastructure that I don't want to crush the public servers, and I don't want the public servers to impact my private services. But the point is that those calls, some of them are public, some of them are just internally scripts that just run. So be careful, you know, when you look at those statistics. Wow, it had 1 million hits. Yeah, it just queried itself 1 million times an hour. Make sense?
Yep. Maybe you have that bit of information which confuses me. It said under services, it also lists the Antelope chain API RPC node, right? And the Atomic Assets API. Is this part done, or why is no one registered there?
No, I mean, obviously I'm not driving the bus, but he's working on adding some of that other stuff, and it will support all of the API structures, you know, maybe even some more. But no, I don't think that it's open for everybody to register. I think he might have started registering some of his own, but yeah, I'm super excited about dumping, because that's the majority of my traffic. My history servers are maybe 10% of my API calls. That's not nearly what people need. Get tables and push transactions. Those are 1 million in 10 minutes sometimes, you know, 5 minutes.
Yep.
1 million a minute starts to crush my servers, I can tell you that. Actually, like the routers and stuff. Anyway, no, I don't think it's ready, but he stopped talking to me because he's just got to get shit done. So that's good.
Yeah, we need to wait for that. But at the same time, you could already register your Hyperion with Query Hub. It would just require you to update your Hyperion to some of the latest versions. As I see, not 3. Yeah, 350 minus 3 and 350 minus 5 is around.
Yeah, I think anything 350, technically. I mean, there's reasons he's releasing those other patches. There's still some wonkiness. Like, I think he's still fighting issues with Swagger and stuff like that. That I don't know if he's actively working on them. I think there's just some bugs and quirks. He's working on a bunch of stuff. Like say, I know he's been super busy, so trying to finish all this up. Dami just did the whole new front end. That looks pretty. Y'all haven't seen it in a while. Go load it. Got a prettier interface.
Yeah, it looks nice, much improved
Mm.
from the last demo we had for that.
Right. And I mean, Igor's working on kind of a big fundamental change of tracking it at like the proxy level as opposed to only at the individual indexer level. Helps fix issues like mine where I have a primary and a secondary. Because you'll see I have 1 million hits a day on one API and 12 hits an hour on the other one. It's just sitting there back up, idle. But they're one API. It's just the proxy servers health checking and load balancing.
Another quiz question. Where do we allocate more points, on the tech ops or on their contributions? What do you say?
Why do you continue to judge them on the same scale is what I say. But that's a different conversation. I'll let other people chat.
Absolutely. But we are in the phase of gathering all the facts to do a good decision, to be able to make a good decision, an informed decision, without disrupting too much of the network at the same time. So I think we need to look at all of that. Technical scores, product scores, how many points are granted on different APIs. For example, Atomic Assets API has become de facto standard API you would host on Wax. Like you become a guild, you feel obliged to host Atomic Assets API. Not feel obliged, you are obliged actually to make enough points to become a standby.
Right, but it's also, I mean, to spin up a full-blown Atomic server in comparison to a full-blown Hyperion servers, and even run it going forward, it either runs or it doesn't. You know, it doesn't have a lot of the quirks and a lot of that extra stuff. But and that's what I say. If you want your public providers to provide a base level of public APIs, the chain API, maybe even Atomic, and even light history, I still see benefits.
That's interesting, because if you would compare those both, the partial history at the moment, given a good enough SLA, would grant you 2 points, so 24 in total. On the other side, running Atomic Assets API plus a light API node plus an IPFS node, that would grant you the same points.
Right, not light API. I'm saying like partial history, but yes.
Okay, that's what you mean with light history, like the partial.
Same concept is you just pick which. There's certain categories, and you say, okay, it's. And like I say, for me, who builds my own servers and runs the servers the way that I do, to build 2 servers with 40 terabytes of space is not worth 12 points. I just. Getting demoted to standby is cheaper than the 12 points overall. Does that make sense? You know, I mean, so
someone's playing the game theory here. No, you're right. I mean,
you're the one that gave it points.
Yeah,
that's the game.
yeah, you're absolutely right about that one. At the end, it's business. So
well, and that's why I say it's not even about how high it's a game. It's business decision, literally. I mean, yeah, you know what it costs for a 20 terabyte hard drive, you know,
no,
or an array, you know, of a SAN or NAS or whatever. Is it whoa? Is that worth 12 points? No. Just like some of the other guilds have said, I have such high contribution points, it's not worth it for them to run a atomic or whichever ones are optionals now, is that you're like, no, I can take that 12-point hit because I've got a product that earns me 400 points, even though it goes down every day. So that would be.
Another question I have to you, especially to you, Michael, because you have been around forever here. Before we introduced technical requirements for a guild in such a way that we did after 2021, I would say, what APIs were you running as a guild on Wax?
All of them. Us personally, all of them. We always run all of them. That's my thing. I mean,
those were atomic assets, right?
Yeah.
So let's see, pre 2021, an RPC API node, and Hyperion was already around. So you ran a full Hyperion history node, I think.
Yeah, until it became unsustainable. I mean, about, I don't know, Alien Worlds, September, October, and it was blowing out all the servers just because, it was exponential growth. That's when we kind of shifted over to, we didn't need full history. We just started running partial. And then your point system just worked with it. I haven't run a full history server in a long time on Wax. I run them for every other chain other than Wax because it's just not financially viable, in my opinion. And if I need the history, I can get it. I mean, I have the full state history servers. I can spin up a farm of servers and get all of the data. But yeah, offering it publicly, not to get smashed on and not to have two of them and not to have, not when I can earn 2 points for providing a server that runs. It runs on a i9, 128 gig of RAM with a 4 terabyte SSD. I mean, it's like $2,000 worth of hardware versus 20.
Yeah. That's just a side note, and I don't know where this comes from, but I feel like if a community wanted to I don't know, Henrik and Pixel Journey, he'd like to become a guild. His community and his project is adding values to Wax, but the threshold to become a guild on Wax is actually pretty high. You would need a lot of knowledge to run a successful guild, points-wise, to be eligible for a standby guild. How could a minimum requirement for a guild on Wax look like? Just an RPC API node? Or should there be more?
I feel like I've talked the whole meeting, so maybe I should just stop and let anybody else chime in. But I have opinions on that. And it's all the other chains is provided as much exposure on that. But I'll wait. Anybody else have something to say? And it not be the Michael show.
Yeah. Bothers me also that I have to do a lot of talking here. Exactly because of include nulls comment, guild should not just be infra providers. And that's exactly what's happening at the moment, because you will need to run a whole bunch of infrastructure on Wax to become a guild and receive some reward for securing the network, adding values, contributing to Wax, to growing Wax and the ecosystem. Just comes with the burden of running a lot of tech ops operations, which is not possible and also not easily done. It also comes with a price tag because you need to rent servers, typically on Hetzner or wherever you want to put your servers. So you have those costs. And at the end, your tech ops might fail and you won't receive any payment because of the standby threshold, which is I dislike that especially. But at the
I
same
don't
time,
get.
yeah. Go ahead. You don't get.
I mean, Noel and I obviously have some differing opinions, although we love each other. But forcing value providers to become infrastructure, the primary infrastructure providers for the chain, does not lead to the greatest experience. We literally beat our guilds into providing public infrastructure. And yet here we're having this conversation about, it's still not always the greatest, better than everybody else's. But I can tell you this, when you don't enforce having to force them to do infrastructure, you get value providers that don't have a clue how to really run any infrastructure, even if they do, right? And it leads to a pretty lackluster experience. There's several other chains that have minimal providers because most of the slots are getting filled by value providers. Most of the infra providers are just scaling down because it's no longer worth it for them. And it's leaving a gapped ecosystem with, the network's bogging down and you can't, your transactions are disappearing. And just think about all of the fun that we've had over the last 4 years of training and learning all of this, and all these new guilds that are coming in don't know, right? I mean, they come back and they're like, what the hell are you, how do I fix this, right? What do you mean I have 0 transactions? What do I need to do, guys? How do I don't do this. You're forcing me to do this in order to come and get a paycheck. The only recurring mechanism for pay is to be a guild, it's the value provider. But in order to do that, you got to go spend a couple $1,000s a month on servers and infrastructure, DevOps and specialized knowledge, because it ain't easy. So that's why I always go back to, if you want good infrastructure and you want to value providers, in my opinion, you always struggle to get both of them out of the same group of people. It's too different. Why do we force Alcor to go and spend $3,000 a month on all the public API servers and everything that they need just to be able to do the public stuff, when
Absolutely. Exactly.
literally all we want is, Alcor, you need some funding from the chain to keep doing what you're doing? Okay, here. There's no mechanism for that. He had to become a BP. He came to me and asked me to do it. And I'm like, I can't do it for you. So he had to go find somebody. And I don't know who's doing it, but just an example. Love Apple.
You're absolutely right about that. This has just led to many guilds running infrastructure that sometimes is unreliable, or they have to spend a lot of hours on resolving some issues because they need to become knowledgeable first, and then they can apply a fix, or they need to talk to some specialist on infrastructure, like you mentioned, right? And on the other side, it consumes a lot of resources for those guilds that have awesome products where the budget should be focused on, but at the same time they need to put up the APIs to justify their position in the guild roster. And I think that's the flaw here.
Henrik has his hand raised. Jump in there.
Oh yeah, I missed that. Henrik, go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to comment, and now I'm a little bit at risk at becoming a little bit unpopular, probably, but I think that the only jobs of guilds isn't only providing infrastructure and maybe some products, but also the onboarding part of the network. And that is a part that I think, from my perspective, the guilds have massively failed on, basically all of them. So how could we perhaps enforce that more so that the guilds would be maybe more incentivized to also do that part of it? Because then well, I don't know if that could be some way of changing the system so that there could still be enough points in being more of an onboarding or an educational project on Wax compared to being an infrastructure provider. And then maybe that could be a way of becoming a standby guild via that with minimal nodes needed or whatever else. But yeah, I just think that following on what Michael mentioned, I mean, of course, infrastructure is the very most important for a blockchain. But apart from that, we also need users coming in. We also need like people.
You need value providers. You're right.
Yeah, you need somebody to make the space interesting to explore and to give the people the means that they need to do those things. And that's not always the infrastructure or the network itself.
But let me ask you this, is that how many of your nerds that you have locked away in your IT closets in the basements of all of these are also the designers and the developer and the marketers and the whatever? I don't social media. I barely software development. And so as an heavy infrastructure provider, I try to provide value in helping all the other providers that don't know what the hell they're doing and need to learn. And number two, you forced my hand into, all right, I'll try to provide some value. And I'm trying. I went and built an integration of Minecraft and Wax blockchain, and I'm doing the best I can. But you know what? There's only about 50 or 70 daily users on it. And so I don't really get a lot of points. You know why? Because it's not great at onboarding. You know why? I'm not great at onboarding. You know what I'm really good at? Running infrastructure. So and what a lot of value providers aren't good at is what we're good at. Providing infrastructure, knowing the way the software works, making sure that there aren't lags between the blocks that are causing empties or peer-to-peer and all of this, right? I mean, so I hear you. I mean, but you really want me to have to onboard users? You want me to go in social media? Because I don't really social media. What's that Twitter thing called X now?
Yeah,
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I understand what you mean, but considering that we have 21 guilds now that are running a full history node only to get the points, where instead we could have like half of those focusing hours a day on social media and onboarding and outreach to new users, and maybe the network as a whole would be better off.
I agree. I mean, force the majority of the VPs to be value providers instead of infrastructure providers. You don't need 31 big infrastructure providers, but you damn sure would get bad with 36 value providers. I mean, so I kind of agree with you, but the fact that we force value providers, because the only recurring revenue on the chain, in my opinion, outside of generating your own revenue to be supported by the chain, is to become a guild. So in order to take your product and get some established rewards, you have to increase your cost and increase your burden simply to muddy the waters, right? I mean, okay, why do you have 36 infrastructure providers? Because you literally forced all 36 of them to run that. and the cost and the pain to come along with it. Why?
I don't know, but
more players? Yes, sure. More players to play Minecraft. What you got, Noel? Got to come out of his cubby to talk.
Hello. I just had a crazy thought.
Oh, I like those.
What if we fully separate the tech side, the infra side, from the ecosystem of value side, right? Right. Listen. Hear me out. So only the tech evaluation determines the top 21 spots. And then you have a separate fund Maybe even get rid of standby pay. Ooh,
Cut the BP pay, the infrastructure pay. I don't need as much if I don't have to go hire a bunch of developers, in my opinion. But I love
Right.
you, no, I love you.
separate the ecosystem fund stuff and award points to projects that apply and want to be included. Guilds included can also have points for products, and then they get maybe additional pay or points for the products and the value provided to the ecosystem and the chain, and that gets paid out of savings or something. So it's, instead of having parachute and standby pay and everything, those funds could go to incentivizing people to build and provide products on the chain. What does everyone think of that?
The separation of points in itself is pretty interesting, because if you would, if that amount would shrink a little bit, it would naturally lead to less APIs provided.
Right, but we'd have more consistent APIs.
Yeah.
Because
Right.
the people who don't want to run infrastructure will stop running infrastructure because they can get paid and supported from the other side.
It's not worth it
if
for
they
them.
have a good product.
Right.
Like someone like Alcor, as Michael mentioned, they could be leading the charts on the ecosystem side of things and getting support that way without having to run however many servers they run, just to be able to get something. So,
And they might still. I'm not speaking
no.
for Avril. I mean,
Right.
They're big shop. They're good at what they do. I love Avril. That's why. But I remember, I mean, and I know I've talked to other projects that have done the same thing, and on multiple chains, that they're just looking for funding. And that's what I always said, is that I don't use these numbers, but yes, take the B pay right now and just cut it in half. I mean, it's maybe 60-40, whatever works out better. It's probably more for the value add, because they're going to have to pay developers way more than I have to pay my servers and sysops, right? But truly just kind of group them and say, okay, if you want to compete on this scale, you can even have a point ranking system of tech ops and SLA and all of that. But just say, if you want to do that, and here's a little bit of pay. And if you also still want to be, a value provider and do all of this as well, and focus on this. But it stops making you have to pick one or the other, and just say, if you're looking for value add funding, compete with other value add products. And Michael, if you don't want to try to develop some product that you can only get 50 or 70 people to use, and the only way to get more credit for it is to go find a magic 1,000 people to play, is cool. Compete with the other tech ops. And obviously I would have a better chance over there. And you wouldn't have your number one BP not even fully prepared to deal with infrastructure problems. I think that's a fair statement. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, I love their product. I don't think they wanted to get shit to break on them either. But you know why? That's not what they do. So they weren't ready. And guess what? It really didn't matter, because they were so high. I don't think they ended up getting penalized out of top 21, did they? Y'all voted them out.
Yeah, for 3 weeks exactly.
Oh,
so
okay.
3 weeks of no payment at all because of a 0 score.
And you know what? I hate that for them. You know why? Because I'd rather them get paid and keep Atomic Hub going. You're penalizing them because a cosmic ray hit their server. And I don't know, they had some peering quirks and issues and, whatever. Yeah, it's hard, man. This isn't a guest node, And
now that you mention, yeah.
Okay.
And now that you mention it, it would be more logical to cut the pay by 50% because the tech side is failing, but the product is still awesome. So, but under the current rules,
to do what they don't really particularly care about to begin with, to get paid. So anyway, great bold idea, Noel. I fully support it. Have for years been saying this.
One thing I'm curious about, would such a value provider who's onboarding his community onto Wax, would we want him to register as a guild on Wax still and provide an RPC API node, like a bare minimum
In my
setup?
opinion, everybody has the open right to, if you want to be a value provider and try to get that revenue and bear that burden and fight those costs, right? I can do it for a hell of a lot cheaper than all the rest of you guys because I capitalize my hardware. So I can compete and I can have higher, whatever. Whereas eventually people are going to be like, like Dimitri, right? I mean, the bounty blast can be like, no, that amount of revenue, 40% of my BP pay to not have to deal with that. Nope. But I'll be happy to not get penalized and wake up and have to sweat because an alert goes off that his value add product is not going to get funding because a cosmic ray hit his node.
I yesterday calmly explained to him that he would be top 5 guild if he put up the same infrastructure as others do. But he also explained to me that it's
Why would he?
Exactly. Why would he? And that's not what he wants to focus on. So I understood that legit critique on the system.
Anyway, so yes, it's a long, ongoing battle, or discussion, not a battle. But yes, why do you keep having your infra and your value add? And I'm surprised Kfr hadn't joined in, because that's normally who comes and whacks me with his big stick. And I respect it. I mean, that's the opinion, and that's tended to be the majority's opinion. Cool. Yeah. Well, I'll play your game if that's how we want to do it. Want to come play Minecraft?
No, not at the moment.
Are you still here?
Not that game with the bats where you need to destroy the bat.
You need to destroy the bad. What? You talking about whacking me in the head? What?
No. There's a Minecraft game where everyone starts with his own bed and you need to destroy the other's bed, like where you sleep in,
Well, yeah.
That looks
bed wars.
Bed,
Yes.
yeah. But
Anyway.
back to topic. What does, how is a good infrastructure guild on Wax described? Like, let's say the whole guild roster will only be compiled of the technical points. What's the competitive factor here? So how do you evaluate if someone is very good on the tech ops side and someone is not? Just like before, the technical reviews, reviewing the APIs from outside, or is there more to it?
I mean, I would tend to believe it's much more of those objective metrics that can be measured, judged, rated. Your idea of a bank of points and the amount of points that are available for like public APIs with full blocks, right? Something that's not crazy specialist like a full-blown Hyperion node or something, but to give you that kind of scalability that says, look, if you make the numbers, you make the points. But the more of you guys that pile in there and provide the good infrastructure, that's a win. And ultimately, it'll have its self-leveling of those that want to focus on it and provide those, if it's worth it, we'll do it. And if not, as long as you still have good providers, I mean, and it's based on SLA, it's based on tests. And you don't have to fight the battle of only getting points because 50 people play Minecraft. Does that make sense? 1 million people use my API last hour. That's what I want credit for.
Yeah. Like, would that 2-track system really avoid people registering as a guild and putting up all the APIs like before unused?
What's the problem? If they're reliable because you're testing and getting the SLA, and focus on this is what you signed up for. You're either doing it or you aren't. You know, and if you are, great. You know, and if there's 20 of them, the score is going to get so low that eventually number 21 is going to be like, it's probably not worth it, you know, or I mean, but if you have 20 reliable APIs and you're not having to pay value added revenue models, you know, I mean, my servers don't cost as much as my developers, right? I have DevOps, but I can have a lot more servers. I can scale my servers way better than I can scale my developers. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm just thinking about a example you just named, Alcor Guild, right? Like, let's say they wouldn't want to put up any infrastructure and instead focus on the product side. Like with the current
better example of that, Alcor, they have to have the infrastructure. They'll probably continue to do what they do. They're just so big and so whatever. But Dimitri is probably a good example because he said it. They're not an infrastructure shop. They don't want to do it if they don't have to.
Yeah, but let's say back to if we remove the standby pay for the technical side only, okay, and you have only those top 21 guilds with the daily block reward, a guild like Dimitri's would be left out of that eventually.
I'm not sure I follow, but in that scenario, and I don't think get rid of all the standbys, but take BP pay and split it in half, just for easy numbers. I don't know, what is it, like $8,000 a month or something like that? So $4,000 a month if you're an active technical guild, and $4,000 a month if you're the top value provider guild or whatever. And then rank them and pay them accordingly, either active and standby or biggest value add to smallest value add, but literally split them in half to, and again, it may be 60-40 because developers value add. If you're really adding value, in all honesty, you probably are more valuable than me, a good infrastructure provider. But that doesn't mean that they need to always be together, right?
Yeah. I still feel like there will be competition for the top 21 spots, and it will still remain the same problem that everyone is putting every API that's out there to receive the score.
If they're doing that and the API is good, what's the problem? That makes sense?
Yeah, what's the problem? I don't know what the problem is. Maybe that providing so many APIs doesn't fit within the budget that we would allocate for the tech ops side. Just
it's competition for, I mean, if it's not enough for you, maybe providing infrastructure isn't your game of that you want to play. You want to be a value provider? You should go get funding over there.
Fair enough. Because I also think looking at the guild roster, what did he say? I want a situation where people can be incentivized to build a good product on Wax without needing to run a producer and infra. Exactly that. I also, just to add to that, I also want, or I wish we would have a way to onboard some of the awesome and wonderful communities on Wax, which didn't get their foot into the guild roster because they didn't want to put up all the infra, to be part of the value add group, like Michael said, and receive some basic funding from the chain to continue providing value or expand on that over time.
I'm curious. I mean, and it's a subjective question, I guess, but do you think that the majority of people that are in standby are because they're heavily infrastructure provider, because that's what they can do to get the points. But do they really just have a value that they're trying to participate and get some sort of funding out of? And the only way to do it is to meet the bare minimum and then get half of a point on their, and then argue with you about how much their product is adding value and onboarding. Does that make sense? I mean, are all the people that are down there really infrastructure providers? No. I mean, I'd venture to say there's probably a decent amount of those that probably be like, cool, I don't have to fight this infrastructure battle and I can get a small amount of value add, right? I mean, maybe they don't get as much as like a Atomic or a Hive or a Bounty Block, but they don't have to provide infrastructure just to be able to get some value add. I mean, are they onboarding 50 users a month? That may be worth $20 a month worth of, at least it's something. Versus this is literally the only source of revenue other than Wax Labs, and let's not even go down that.
Difficult to get into specific contributions for that answer, but it's not
right.
like people are not trying to build new stuff on Wax. It's literally happening with every report we get submitted, that we identify a few new products being built or attempts to build a product as a competitor to something existing.
What's your average point per product? Because I know all of ours are low, and I get it. It's because I only have 50 or 70 users, but at least us, we're just trying to throw as much as we can or updates or whatever to try to get you guys to give us credit for doing the value add. You know what I mean? That's why I say is you get new products, I'll slap a new one up there too and see if I can maybe get some points out of it. I don't want to. I'd rather just spin up a new server.
What was your question? What's the average point we have?
Give or take. Yeah, I mean, like I know my average points per contribution is probably like 0.5, maybe 1. I mean, how many 5s or 4s, even 3s do you really have out there?
Not many. It's 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14. 14 5s.
And out of those are probably 3 per the same BP. So, I mean, that's my point is I get it, but the majority of us are just slapping shit against the wall and trying to get some credit. And that's just because we did some work. We're trying to get some value extracted out of it. The ecosystem makes it very difficult to pay the bills. You want me to onboard people, but I can't make profit.
So the average point for a contribution is 1.45.
Right. And now look at the grouping of all of us down at the bottom. And there's probably some EOS USAs down there too. And not all the way, but
none at all.
Well, those are backups and stuff.
Those are only backups here. I mean, we also have a view by guild. Not going into specific contributions, right? You know, we don't talk about points here, but we talk about average points.
Oh, well, as you're thinking. Did you exclude the backup? No, he didn't. That's why all those 0.25s were backup. But
yeah,
don't exclude those. Shit, those are some of my points. Come on, give them back. Okay.
So the average point is 1.45 at the moment.
So you got a lot of people that are trying, and what constitutes a 1 or a 1.5? Maybe 100 users? 150?
And this is how it has been always. We decide on value added. There will never be a global agreement on what is worth what points, but
I could say that there's at least some of ours probably wouldn't even be there, struggling to try to even be the lower value added, because we were forced to try to, you got to provide value. Okay. But if you gave them a scale on that and just said, look, you can earn some pay and not have to have a $4,000 paycheck because you're running $3,000 worth of servers that we make you run, but literally you got a small project and you're providing some value. Here's a small paycheck, 50 bucks, 100 bucks. You know, I mean, scale it accordingly based off of your points and a subjective rating system. Technical can be more objective because it's services, measurable, and mathematical. Anyway, I know we've talked
My
about
stomach,
it.
my stomach is already hurting and having to explain how a score is assessed to those communities. Honestly,
That's a problem in itself, just so you know. I get it. I smell what you're cooking. But yeah, try doing that to an infrastructure shop. It's like, I don't even want to do it to begin with. Damn it.
yeah. I still feel like there should be the requirement to register on chain and provide an RPC API node for those projects that want to tap into the ecosystem track.
Why? If you give them a rating of a 0.5 and that qualifies you for, say, $50, a small portion of the pot, and say, look, if you contribute more value, you can get more value based off of your score. Why would you at all want to burden them with, do you run your own node? Have you ever run a node before? No? All right, well, get ready, baby. What kind of a node? Oh, a bare metal i9 with 128 gigs of RAM and make sure that it's peered properly. And what? Why?
On that note, it interests me to learn about the costs associated with running an RPC node on AWS, since we got that partnership, and how easy it is and how expensive it would be.
I'm not sure that partnership has anything to do with anything.
Super expensive. Okay.
AWS is super expensive.
Yeah,
but not
that.
because or in lieu of before or after that partnership announcement. I don't think, but it's just, and the more space you get in any cloud is really where they rip it to. And you want a full API, that's a 3 terabyte, 4 terabyte block log, you know?
Yeah.
You could host
it's also the
bandwidth
is also pretty expensive, right?
Well, it depends on how much it's used and, you know, whatever, but that's why I say you don't have to pay a value provider nearly as much if you don't force them to provide infrastructure that they don't want to begin with. But great news, you do want to provide infrastructure and you do think that you want that revenue, register on the technical track, and then you can pony up and see how you compete over there. And if you provide good infrastructure, you can get compensated for it. If you don't, you don't. But great news, you don't get penalized and not get paid for the value you provided because you don't know how to run this super complex node that you didn't want to do in the first place. I don't know. It's been a lot of me talking and you talking. Glad Mel jumped in. Anybody else?
Pretty sure today's discussion was better than the previous we had about that, because we also managed to talk about payment, about an alternative system to track those two sites separately. Quite an inspiring one today compared to the previous ones.
It was a lot of me talking. Sorry.
That's good. I love that. Otherwise, I would ask questions and nobody would answer. But so, thank you, Michael.
I don't know if I wasn't here, maybe other people would be here to answer those questions.
I like your perspective on that. I like it, and I couldn't agree more that there needs to be a separation between techies and value adders.
At least consider it.
That topic alone has been raised by you, right? That term, value providers versus infrastructure providers.
Yes, although I always got to try to give credit. Stan, six years ago, Amsterdam, he was the first one, because he's heavy infrastructure, and does other things too, obviously, but is why are you forcing infrastructure and value providers into the same braiding, molding, pay scale, any of that? Name any other company that has ever done that and gotten anything good. You don't even want your developers building your front ends, much less running your marketing campaigns.
Anyone else who wants to add something to today's discussion?
Come on, somebody other than me, please.
And I just remembered there was Henrik's comment about the marketing efforts and the networking efforts. We are rewarding those. So during this year, especially, we did a change to the we applied a change to the scoring, which led to increasing the score for ecosystem contributions compared to products from 10 to 12. So we brought those two on par because we wanted to set a bigger incentive on growing the ecosystem. So that was one attempt of doing it. And the other one is that to this day, we are rewarding some points for onboarding communities, projects, striking deals with other protocols. We are rewarding this. You can find it on some score sheets. But it's not that it's happening too often too. So you may need to look into the details.
Yeah, I'm a little bit unsure if like integrate like ecosystem like blockchain integrations from other ecosystems, if they should count as onboarding, because it also needs to be like promoted. There are so many products on Wax and so many things that I think have been possibly rated and rewarded as something that provided a lot of value to the space. But if nobody knows about the projects, if they don't actually actively, for example, something as simple as being active on Twitter or X every few days, or at least once a week, should be minimal, I think. But most projects on Wax just aren't. I've just made a list today of some of the more like active users on X from the Wax ecosystem, and I only think I found like 150 or something. Like it's not that many users, and I think we could do so much more if we had 50 products of 50 projects on Wax, all incentivizing their communities to get out there and like help raise the communities up, the products, and make them reach that much further, then I think we would be able to do a lot better as well. Just this past month, I've just been focusing on my Pixel Journey 6 Conquest mission again, and we have grown our profile by I think like 1,500 users or something in a month. We have reached I think we have gotten about 150,000 impressions, which isn't a ton either. I know there's some projects who could, like not on Wax, but in crypto in general, who can get that many views on a single post. But it's slowly, step by step, getting there. And
yep,
yeah,
you would definitely get rewarded for that. We've done that in the past. Like a very good example where you can find that on some older score sheets was Taco Crypto, right? They have been added to the guild roster during last year. They developed some awesome products, and also they had a nice network effect on social channels, onboarded a couple of communities onto Wax. we've always given them some points for that effort because it stood out to us. They supplied good metrics to it, and we really saw the effect of that onboarding, right? So we have been rewarding that. It's what I hear here is we should reward that more often and more heavily, which I wouldn't disagree with. It's just that based on metrics, right? Only metrics, you can't really do it, because what's 1,500 followers on Twitter worth? It can be gained. Do those people sign up for a wallet through Wombats account creation system? You know, we need to funnel them into a system, or we just need to funnel them into account creation. And if account creation would have some referral system or whatever it is, we would see, okay, that initiative led to 100 wallets being created in the past 30 days. And that's a good stat. That's a stat where you can say, okay, there's some value, you can reward it, right?
Yeah, I'm not saying that just what we've done the past month should be worth all that much, but I'm saying what I mean is that it's at least a step along the way. I think that is the direction that the whole ecosystem should go, because if nobody really wants to promote Wax, then nobody will come in. And yeah, and currently I'm a little bit surprised that new members are even joining, because how are they finding Wax? What are they researching before getting started on Wax and finding like super interesting to get engaged in? Or yeah, I mean, just if you search up projects on Wax, half of the projects you find on something like Twitter are not even active anymore. They haven't posted for the last few years. So somebody doing their research in the ecosystem might find that the ecosystem looks a little bit dead. And I agree, because most things don't post, not even guilds.
To be fair, many of them are doing a monthly post about their progress on the guild side. But on the content creation side, we don't receive many contributions. Like we for example, had in 2021, 2022, we had a guild named Token Gamer. You may know them. They have had a very successful platform news outlet, and they were writing a lot of content for Wax, which reached a lot of audience. We liked that. We incentivized that. We would be super willing to grant points for efforts that aim to grow the Wax community and ecosystem. I wish someone could reach out to some of the meme coin communities on other chains and convince them to bridge their token to Wax and bring along their community members. That would be a super good contribution, potentially receiving a lot of points, because it has a huge network effect. It's not like you shouldn't do it. It's not that we wouldn't incentivize it, but no one has done a deal like that in the past.
That's a monstrous task, and in no way accounts for, I mean, the technical burden that would incur. I get it, but for some points, nah, bruh. Not if I have no way of getting any funding to do the actual onboarding. You know, that
absolutely. Absolutely, I know what you mean. Like, how can you onboard a community? Just hey, Wax is awesome, come over here, and people would suddenly spawn.
Right. Oh, you're based off of Solana? Oh, that's okay. You just have to rewrite everything. You have to run your own nodes. You have to do a completely separate logic. You need to coexist on both chains. You're absolutely, never mind. That makes me laugh to think there's any amount of points that would be worth doing that on any sort of recurring regular basis. That's so hard, much less even accomplishing that, you know?
Yeah, it is.
I also think it's a very hard sell to get like a huge meme community to come to Wax because okay, we have Woofy, but apart from Woofy, we don't really have any memes on Wax that doing that well.
We got more than memes. So essentially, those meme communities on other chain, it's only about trading and speculation. But then you tap into Wax and see all the possibilities on the creator side. That detail about Wax is superior to any other chain. Like what you could build for your community with all the tools for free on Wax, that's awesome. No other chain has that.
Yeah, I agree. But meme coins don't really need all those things. All they need is a group chat, they need a ticker, they need maybe a cute, relatable animal, and they need a community to hype it up. All the things that they need, they already have on Solana. So how do we get them to use Wax instead if they aren't interested in making NFTs or making, I don't know, token staking farms? I mean, we have a lot of good tools, but we don't really have that much liquidity. We don't really have that bigger community. What are we offering them? What is the selling point of Wax?
Yeah, it's certainly not the volume and the trading and some of that stuff. It's more like at some point they will reach. I'm pretty sure they will reach a point where the community is all about a Telegram group chat and trading and possibly only green numbers on some tables and some positive price action. But those communities at some point will be asking for more than just a community and a Telegram chat. They will want to see utility for the token, right? Let's be real. It's not going to be always only about trading and speculation on the token. Those communities are also fueled by a lot of promises happening in the background. We are going to build this and that. I mean, look at Floki or Shiba or whatever it is. They're building like an ecosystem around that token with different applications for the token, but those applications, they are ugly, they don't work, they consume a lot of gas, and the features are very limited on those other chains compared to Wax. So what we need to sell to them is this here on Wax is not about trading your token or whatever it is. It's about you want to build something, you want to build a fun and engaging experience for your community, you can only do it on Wax. This is what we sold.
Yeah, but I think the meta right now is actually that the meme coins, they don't need utility. The only utility a meme coin needs is the community, a shit ton of volume, and a price. I mean, you just need a market to be traded, something to generate some news, which can be price going up, price going down, maybe a new listing, something like that. But I think the new meme coins are only going to like $500,000 based on speculation and memeness. Basically,
absolutely.
It's not because they have some smart utility. So
yeah, that's what I actually mean. At some point, the market, the Solana meme coins will be oversaturated, or one day. Like a project after project is launching, and never a utility for this token is added. But it's always only about trading. But I think in the heart, the community wants more. Like, look at what was that other thing with the apes, where they launched their own token. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, Bored Ape. Yeah, exactly. Most of the people didn't buy it because of the nice at the beginning, of course, because of speculation and trading and stuff like that. But the majority of the community that stick to that project, they did because of Dookie Dash or whatever that mobile game was called, about that metaverse built in the background, because of the utility. That's why people.
I don't think so because first of all, Bored Apes, they built a brand. They got popularity via the NFTs. They managed to reach, I don't know, hundreds of thousands of Ethereum traded in volume on their secondary markets. and they built like the most known NFT brand in the whole world in 2021. The Ape coin came afterwards, once the NFTs were already super hyped, and there was a massive airdrop to all the Bored Ape holders. Then afterwards, the Bored Apes could stake their Bored Apes and the mutants, and I don't know if also the kennel things, to generate more ape tokens. And from 21 to now, or till a few months ago when they launched their ape chain, the price had mostly just been plummeting, also a little bit because it was like the hype was dying a bit. But once they released their ape chain and they released their ape express, which is their fund for ape chain, at the same night, then the price of ape also mooned super high. So I don't think
I'm looking at charts. It's the token is dead, and it's dead for a reason, because people won't buy into such a product if there's no utility or promises made or new features releasing for something to do. So some actual news to bring hype to that token.
No, I think why Ape is failing a little bit now in this latest meta is actually because they have too much utility. They have such a big ecosystem that is already like intertwined, established. The people who have the Bored Apes, they already or who have been staking for the ape tokens for years, they already way ahead of everybody buying in now. Whereas in the meme token on Pump Fund meta, you can just put in $100 into something or $10, and maybe it goes up 100 times in value overnight. And not because it has some utility, just because the community and the memes and the pumps are strong.
Yeah. That's what made the project strong when it launched. But now they're in a down spiral because there's not much happening in that project anymore. Or there could be a lot happening, but I don't know how far they went. But it's the same essentially with every meme coin out there. To keep the hype fueling, they would need to put out messages and generate hype. How do you do that? Like the same we want on Wax, right? We want new products, fun and engaging experience, but you can't build those on other protocols really, like on-chain fun, if you want to call it that. It would. I'm pretty certain it would help them. It would help any meme community to be bridged over to Wax, and then that token can be spent on NFT mints, blends, and whatever else we have on Wax. It can essentially, they tap into a lot of utility we have on Wax, which they won't have in the next 2 years. So I think that's a win for their community. It's not a loss at all. It's just a win.
But there needs to be a reason for them to do so. Like if you're based on another chain, just say, hey, come to Wax and bridge over stuff, etc. It's just adding a lot more complexity. They might as well just create a Web2 solution and have it sync with their own chain if the fees are an issue, you know.
But my point is that the meme coins that are blowing up today, they are not blowing up because they are offering utility or that they even need utility. They are only blowing up because they are simple, stupid memes.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the reason for the launch and the success after the launch. But as a reason also,
it's also all they focus on. So if they start bridging into Wax, then that just, like Nick says, unnecessarily complicates it, and it makes it a lot more impossible to sell.
Impossible to sell. Yeah, not sure about that one. I mean, they should be able to fund a Wax wallet with their own community token, right? That would be nice to have there. And then being able to pay a few services or experiences on Wax through that token, that would also be awesome. Why should they do it? Because it costs them zero to only a little money to create to bridge their token on Wax, partnering possibly with the Wax team, and then having all that utility. It is complicated, sure, but it's more complicated for them to build what we have on Wax in the next 2 years.
Yeah, but you need a catalyst for them to want it. Like, I bring up the example a lot, but it's a good example, I think. Back when our planet was booming, it would attract new stuff because there was a community that they could tie into. So it was more than just building something on Wax. You would unlock existing communities that you could engage with easily. And something like that just doesn't exist right now, as far as I know.
What if it was no work for them to do that transition because we did the work? So it would mean for them possibly zero cost.
But
but for big IPs, I always thought that would be the best way to do it. So like if you bring on something like Disney or whatever, just say, hey, we'll do all the stuff for you. Set a market fee for stuff that gets paid and make it back from that, or even not. Like all the people that it would bring on. Like if you would get another MLB launch or an NFL or whatever, just footing the bill and building it for them would probably be well worth it.
Mm-hmm.
I think the main issue for meme coins, if we said that somehow they got bridged over, then how do we make the Wax DeFi ecosystem, or the Wax DeFi ecosystem, we don't really have the liquidity, and even less for like a slightly small bridged part of another token, I think. How do we make Wax more interesting to trade on if we imagine that we onboarded some huge meme community on here? Because I feel like unless we had some sort of automatically bridged the liquidity, like bridged swaps, then it would be tricky.
But
it would be a separate liquidity.
But I think it's not a smart idea to chase a meme community, because in a matter of seconds, it could be over and move on to the next thing. There's nothing to tie it. So you would be much better off if there was like something more general that they could all benefit from.
I think the meme communities might be looking at such an opportunity as something like, okay, we can spend maybe $10,000, $20,000 on doing this, or we can pursue something else that might actually get us a lot more holders. And as there is not that many users on Wax and we don't have the huge volumes, we don't have the huge liquidity, then I just think that currently that bridging of meme coins is a little bit hard to argue for the case of Wax.
I get your argument, but just to add a note here, I think we are not looking after the speculators and traders. We are looking after the hodlers, right? So people that engage long-term in a project and not just are there when the hype is going on and leave when things go under. I think there's still a substantial part of the community looking for fundamentals, nice utility for the token. I don't think we should underestimate it and just put them all in one bucket and say those are just speculators and traders. I think there's more to it. I think there are reasons why people are holding such a meme coin token over time. Identity and much more. There's much more to it than only, hey, there's TVL and volume. I think this is our audience, not the speculators. But anyways,
we are. Yeah.
Sorry to cut you off, because I also think this topic is better discussed on our Thursday marketing roundtable or whatever it is, and I find it quite interesting. And we should probably think and talk about onboarding other communities onto Wax, what we would need to do, what we can provide, what are convincing arguments for them to to do such a move, yeah, we can keep going with that discussion on Thursday if you don't mind, because we don't want to bother the technical folks with such stuff, but at the same time it's very interesting. So feel invited to join the Thursday roundtable to talk about more marketing and onboarding initiatives.
Too late, already bothered.
Yeah, indeed. So excuse me for that one. We derailed a little bit, but don't forget about the first part. We had the discussion about the value versus service providers on Wax, and that we are going to continue next week, Tuesday, until we have a decision there, until things change. Let's conclude for today. 1 hour and 45 minutes in. It surprises me that I receive a few comments that people think those calls are too often, but then all of a sudden people join those talks on Tuesdays and we still have a nice discussion about the tech ops side on Wax. So I don't want to take that away, that forum, just for discussing Wax matters. Tuesday tech, Thursday marketing and onboarding ecosystem. I want to keep that. Okay, I'm stopping the recording.